Are there any common mistakes that you think organizations make when addressing third-party risk management?
From my experience in the past, it was probably not getting internal audit involved soon enough in the process, going all the way back to the due diligence of selecting a vendor, evaluating the controls at the vendors. Sometimes you may not even have selected that vendor if you knew how bad the controls were before you actually went into, the contract phase with the particular vendor there.
Mark, I agree with that point strongly, because the other thing we've seen, as Nancy mentioned, the right to audit clause within the contracts. We've seen where you go in and you read this right to audit clause, and the company thinks it's a broad, we can look at anything within the audit clause, and we find out that companies have been very good at narrowing where that audit clause can be, and sometimes you can get in a situation where the place you think you need to go within the organization, you can't go because the right to audit clause doesn't allow it.
It certainly starts with the initial process of whether or not you should even agree to work with this party. But what I've seen at times is that once the relationship is established, there's no monitoring, ongoing monitoring of what that third party is doing, and that becomes very important because that relationship has to be looked at periodically.
What skills should internal auditors possess to effectively evaluate third-party risk management?
So the auditor needs to be not thinking in terms of the kind of the assurance policeman that these controls have to be exactly the way they would like to see them or within their own organization. Needs to be somebody that's flexible. So flexibility ends up being key there in terms of being able to work with not only your internal client within your own company, but with the external provider, because in some cases they may have controls differently, which may be fine, but it's just different in the way that your own company does things. So it's a little bit different skill set than might be required on some of the assurance work.
Open-mindedness, flexibility obviously would be key. I think some of the skill sets are the usual that I would want to see in team members, and that they be analytical, able to communicate whether they see something, inquisitive, to look a little bit beyond the direct area of focus. So some of the usual skill sets.
I think the other point to add to that skill set is the knowing and clearly understanding where your competency and limits are. Because some of these third parties, again, if we go back to why we go to them, is they have a unique competency within an area. That competency may not be within the internal audit shop. So knowing when to go either within the organization to other people to pull in to the audit project to support, so you get the needed competency to actually evaluate and address the risk that third party is helping the company with.
And that goes back to sometimes helping that particular area of the organization develop the program, but they may have the requisite expertise in the area and even know more to specifically what to look for.
It could be that with the subject matter expertise, you might have other people in the company that have some of the expertise that you draw into your audit process and say, hey, Joe over here has some expertise in that area. Let's get him to help us and assist us in evaluating the controls there.
And I think that's a great point, Mark, because that also helps internal audit within the organization be seen as a team player within the organization. Because look, we have this relationship. Let's go look at this and have an evaluation together as one organization.